going to go light a candle and we'll start. But what's with the echo? YouTube is muted.
There might be another, like a phone on.
Okay, we might have the echo fixed.
Great.
Let's get this party started. Pointed to you, and so what we usually do is just have you come in on the Zoom and do the PowerPoint from there on the Zoom, and then make you host. Yeah. Do you have a laptop? Oh, okay, okay. So let me get the PowerPoint up, and we will. You can just indicate to Charlie, and he'll go to the next slide. No. Yes. Hello, folks. Welcome, welcome. We're just getting a little bit of work done here. Now we have to get a PowerPoint up that's on my email.
Yeah, and folks should mute if they're not speaking because there's extraneous noise coming from, I don't know where.
You can share that. You can get back to the Zoom by going like this. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Community Church. Always at the start of this moment, I go back to Brother Blue, wonderful storyteller, wonderful personality you could see on the streets of Cambridge all the time, dressed in his blue suit. And he spoke here in 2002. I'll never forget it. He came into this place, which might as well be just a function hall, you know, any old function hall that has all kinds of events here and dinners, and it's got a funky old floor. And the first thing he did was get down on the ground and kiss the floor. He said, "This is sacred ground." it's not just any old function room where just stuff goes on all the time. It's sacred ground, and that's the flame that we'd like to keep alive here, and that's why we light this candle this morning. If I stood out in the rain at night, my only light a candle 1,000,000 miles away, would you lay down your fire as I raise mine? Would you not kill again? And oh, when you're near me, oh my love, oh my joy, there's nothing ever to weary me, oh my darling one. We have some wonderful music and some wonderful guests this morning. I last saw Colleen in person maybe about 7 or 8 years ago when we were both at this thing called the School of the Americas protest in Georgia. And we shared musical responsibilities in a Catholic mass led by women. And I'll never forget that moment. Colleen is a wonderful singer of songs in both English and Spanish. Colleen serves as a professor at SUNY Cortland of the Spanish language. And it's always great to see Colleen and have her beautify our morning meeting with some music. Colleen, welcome from Cortland, New York. And we'd love to hear a song to begin our program this morning.
Thank you so much. And I'd love to see the split screen because the first song I'm going to do is called Romero. And it's by my beloved friend, Jolie Rickman. She had put his last homily words in English to music. And I'm also so glad that you light a real candle. And I just want to say that I am now retired for 2 years now from teaching, so or rewired, as they say. So I'm very happy to.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So this is called Romero. This is my appeal to you, the rank and file, who service guards, police, and garrison. My brothers, you are all from among the same people, but at your hands your people die. In the name of God, listen to the cries of the suffering. Rise up to the heavens. Why, I beseech you, order you, beg you, cese a la represión. Above all commands you're given by a man, the law of love must stand, and thou shalt not kill. Above any orders you're given by a soldier, the law of God says only to love. In the name of God, listen to the cries of the suffering. Rise up to the heavens. Why, I beseech you, order you, beg you, cese la represión. Brothers, I assure you, you are not obliged to obey one who tells you to kill your people. Now reclaim your conscience, now reclaim your people. Even you, a soldier, can. In the name to the heavens. Why, I beseech you, order you, beg you. In the name of God, listen to the cries of the suffering. Rise up to the heavens. Why, I beseech you, order you, beg you. Cessez la répression.
Thank you, Colleen. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
You can't see them. I might put my phone into service so I can sweep across the walls of the auditorium that has a whole bunch of Romero posters that came to us mostly from our church's board treasurer, who's the former consul general of El Salvador for New England. And he had a marvelous collection, and they have lived on our walls since March 24th, when we commemorated Romero. And it just so happens, later tonight, I am landing at San Romero de las Americas Airport in San Salvador. I will be heading to the airport before this service is even over to fly. I travel there frequently. Anyway, it's just such a moving song, given what this program is about, and especially given the connection between El Salvador and the United States and their connection about mass incarceration. Which leads me to the next story. I better not go on for too long, but I was having a birthday lunch on Friday with friends. I got a call, and it was Pat O'Shea, who is a lifer at Norfolk and had some serious medical issues. He's 84 years old, and he's been in hospital for about 6 months. Finally, in some papers, he found my phone number and gave me a call. And I said, "Which hospital are you in?" "Well, Hebrew Rehab." Whoa, that's like 3 minutes away from where I live. So after the lunch was done, I went to see Pat. Marvelous man, just filled with positive energy. He has worked his 45 years in prison on a project that's called Project Youth, which brings lots of high school kids from a lot of different schools to Norfolk to talk about making good choices and not being knuckleheaded because choices have consequences. It so happened that we have another member of our congregation who's also on the board, who spent 30 years in Norfolk and has been out 3 years and is doing really well and does a lot of work around this church, and is kind of my right-hand man on a bunch of things around the church and around my own El Salvador stuff, which is about importing coffee and selling it at farmers markets and selling it here at the church and different places, neighbors, friends, events like. Anyway, I say this just to ground us into community church. We had a wonderful house concert last night. Jim Infantino gave us his CD release celebration. Wonderful event, marvelous songwriter. Earlier in the week, we remembered Charles Coe. Charles was scheduled to speak here at the end of November and fell ill. Or no, not. It was having prostate surgery, and he posted his hospital bed, him in his hospital bed, on his Facebook page, and I called him up. He said, Charles, you think you're in condition to speak? He said, well, no, let's postpone it. Well, you could speak from your hospital bed. I've done that before in February. But we did postpone it. February 15th is when he was going to talk, but there were complications with the surgery and he passed away. And there were about 75 people here, especially reading poetry. He's a consummate poet and author and published author, long time just beloved member of Boston's literary circles. Charles Co-Presente, we say. Just one more event before we do the opposite of what most churches do. We take the Christmas and New Year's completely off. And that event is this next Sunday. I'm wearing this USS Liberty hat, which gets me a lot of thank you for your service when I go into airports and whatnot. USS Liberty was a ship that was downed in 1967 during the 7-Day War. A U.S. ship downed by the Israeli military, both bombed and torpedoed and napalmed, 40 U.S. sailors killed, 100 more wounded. The survivors, who still 65 whatever years later demand an investigation of what happened and why it happened. They haven't gotten it from this government or any other preceding administration. They will receive next Sunday our annual Sacco and Vanzetti Award. And we will be joined online by the director of the USS Liberty survivors, Phil Turney, and we will be joined in person by a New England member of the survivors who's named Tom Moulin. We also have another recipient of the award who are the Gaza Sumud Flotilla, that fleet of boats that went to try to deliver material aid and medical supplies to Gaza and ended up getting arrested and mistreated and sent back to their countries. There are many countries of origin. There were something like 500 people on that flotilla, including Greta Thunberg, including a wonderful songwriter, Carsey Blanton, and you should check out the song that she wrote about her experience on the flotilla. Anyway, we will be joined that day in person by Greg Stoker, and you might have seen him if you follow Gaza and alternative news sources online. Greg Stoker broadcasts mostly with Mint Press News, and is a veteran as well, and a very versed in all things military, and he will be with us next Sunday as well, in person. He's coming in from Austin, Texas. So we have a really full program next Sunday, and I hope you will join us and tell the world about the USS Liberty and about the Gaza Sumud Flotilla. There will also be one little concert, online only. I might invite just a few people to be here at the church, but it's December 19th, Friday, December 19th, and it's a mostly online concert with my friends Magpie and yours truly, and we'll go back and forth, and we will sing a program that's called Holiday Songs You Won't Hear at the Mall. So join us. It's on the same link that's all our Sunday events and programs. If you care to buy a ticket, you can, and we'll tell you how, but it's also a free concert both on Zoom and YouTube. How long have I been blabbing? Way too long. I apologize to everybody, and especially to the Zoomsters, among whom there's somebody I really want to point out. Bill Littlefield. I just enjoyed your Saturday sports program for so many years, and it's just an honor to have you with us. Bill has spoken at the church before, and comments on sports, and also writes fiction as well. So it's really great to have you, Bill. And Bill also is part of, I believe, the BU Prison Education Program, which is something we'll be talking about more. But first, we're going to hear from Colleen. in the part that we call musical message. Colleen, maybe a couple of songs?
Oh, sure. Okay. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, this is a song I wrote about after, kind of revisiting Angela Davis and also reading The New Jim Crow. And so I would like to sing it for you. It's called Go Ask Angela. Won't let go of the old Jim Crow, dum-dum diddle-dum-day. They put Mumia on death row, dum-dum diddle-dum-day. Fabricated evidence, white law on a mission. Lies piled high over innocence, 40 years in prison. Framed for who he was and the color of his skin, dum-dum diddle-dum-day. Oh, how many others treated just like him, dum-dum diddle-dum-day. From Attica to Wounded Knee, the conqueror makes his way. Oh, down through time's atrocities, back to present day. And the violence feeds on the guns and the fire, and reform is the fuel for the flame. Profits fly high and the barbed wire rises in the prison of pipeline game. But it'll all crack when we push back and imagine another kind of nation. Turn the page of a violent age, the key is education and reparations. Spirit can be broken by bars or chains, dum-dum diddle-dum-day. Oh, jail the body but the mind remains, dum-dum diddle-dum-day. It rises over prison cells, the people's will is stronger. Time to ring liberation bells and tear walls asunder. Time to let go of the old Jim Crow, dum-dum diddle-dum-day. New or old, it's the same Jim Crow, dum-dum diddle-dum-day. Go ask Angela, she's the one who knows, dum-dum diddle-dum-day. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to sing. I've been having a project of taking my beloved Nueva Canción. Dean, you definitely have that, and we have that in common. Love singing songs from the Nueva Canción tradition, and this is extending into the more contemporary songs that sing of social justice in Spanish. And this song I heard as a duet from Lila Downs and Mercedes Sosa, and it's called Land of Light, Tierra de Luz. And I just wanted to sing it. It's a beautiful song. Lila Downs has sung it to the farm workers, and it really speaks of the horrors of exile, how hard it is to leave your homeland for whatever reason. And before I just sing the song, and also I made a singable translation, so I won't translate it for you now, but I just wanted to say I'd be remiss without saying that I'm from Central New York and on the occupied territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Onondaga Nation, and specifically. So it's called Land of Light. Tierra de luz, del que andará ausente. Oigo tu voz, que llora el acordeón. Avisa a tu mamá que aunque esté muy lejos, en este rinconcito accordion plays. Go tell your mama that although I am far away in this little corner of the world, I remember you. I am like the dust that floats along the world, poor and infamous without a home. I am like the clouds that wander aimlessly. I am like someone without the breath of God. Where are you, land of my heart? It's not that I am crying, the rivers overflowed. Where are you? I am just a passenger. Oh, land, you go with me. Ooh, oh, oh, land of light, I'm lost without you. Oigo tu voz cuando el acordeón plays. Oh, te llamaba que aunque esté muy lejos en este rinconcito, yo la he de recordar. Soy como el polvo que flota por el mundo infame y pobre, sin pueblo y sin valor. Soy como una nube que vaga por el cielo, que va llorando sin el aliento de Dios. ¿Dónde estás, tierra de mi corazón? No es que yo esté llorando, el río se desbordó. ¿Dónde estás? Yo soy solo un pasajero, tierra de mi pensamiento. Conmigo vas, conmigo vas, conmigo vas.
Tierra de Luz. Thank you, Colleen Catao.
Thank
A
you.
beautiful song. I heard you sing that back at that same event at School of the Americas Watch protest, and have been singing it myself ever since and recorded it about 5 years ago.
Really?
I'll send you
Oh,
a
that's
copy
amazing.
of the
I would
CD
love to
that
hear
has
it.
that on it. Yeah, yeah. Colleen, thanks so much.
You're so welcome.
I want to just run a couple of more things by you. This is our brand new newsletter, and I'm just so ever thankful to Crystal Rollins Jackson, who is our publications and office manager, who is also our purveyor of everything beauty and elegance and style. And she's put together another newsletter, and every time it gets out the door and we put the stamps on it, we still do a paper newsletter, and it just feels like such a relief. We don't have to worry about that for 2 more months. But just a couple things on here that I'll mention. January 4th, Ilan Pappé, Israeli historian who teaches at Exeter University, who wrote that seminal book that's called the extermination of the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. John, you are my memory aid. It's not the first time it's happened. The ethnic cleansing of Palestine. He'll be with us virtually from England. We also have Larry Watson, longtime gospel singer and professor at Berkeley, now retired, who will give us MLK concert at 3 p.m. on January 18th. We have Reggie Gibson the next week, and Reggie is Massachusetts Poet Laureate. will be joining us. Dr. Harriet Fraud is a sort of radical psychiatrist and psychologist. We have Curry Peterson Smith, the W.E.B. Du Bois address on February 22nd. So a bunch of great things. Please take a copy of this with you and spread the word. Oh, I needed to introduce Mneesha. Mneesha, it's just great to have you here for the first time. It's amazing. It's taken this long for us to find you and find out about your scholarship and about your work, not only about El Salvador, but about prisons as well. I'm so smooth here. One more no more. Dr. Gellman will speak about the human rights situation in El Salvador, drawing on her research about democratic erosion, state and non-state violence, and incarceration there. She will also draw comparisons to democratic backsliding and mass imprisonment in the U.S. This talk will identify some of the central issues at play in the turn towards authoritarianism in El Salvador and the implications for migration and other international relations concerned. Dr. Mneesha Gellman, Associate Professor of Political Science at Emerson College, the author of many books and articles on the politics of violence in Mexico, El Salvador, and in the U.S. Founder and director of the Emerson Prison Initiative, which brings a bachelor's degree pathway to incarcerated students in Massachusetts. Dr. Gellman is past president of the Human Rights Section of the American Political Science Association, serves as an expert witness on country conditions in Mexico and El Salvador in asylum proceedings in the U.S. immigration courts. Dr. Mneesha Gellman, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you like to use a cordless or?
It might maybe be more helpful to have it corded, because one of the awkward things is I'm going to ask for the PowerPoint to play, and I'm going to look at it here. So those of you that are here in person might sort of see me looking at the screen. But yeah, if that can work, I'll just turn my body. And if you would go ahead and turn on the PowerPoint, my tech colleague in the back, that would be great. Charlie, thank you, Charlie. And thank you so much.
I'm not sure where you put the PowerPoint.
Okay. Needs your help. Thank you, Dean, for the invitation. Also, I want to appreciate Calvin Airy for the initial invitation for me to speak here as well. And I know he's watching on Zoom, so thank you for thinking of me and bringing me into this really incredible history-saturated space that combines a lot of different things that I care about. And also shout out to Bill Littlefield for being on the Zoom there. I'm going to claim Bill as being part of the Emerson Prison Initiative team, though, because he, not the BU program, but the EPI program, he's been a teaching assistant with our program for many, many years. So huge appreciation to him for all his years in working with our students. Today, I'm going to do something which I have not really had the opportunity to do in a lot of spaces, which is try to combine the 3 different areas that I actively work in, which in my mind, they're a perfect Venn diagram of overlap, but they are 3 different things. So I'm going to start out talking about El Salvador, and from there look at incarceration in El Salvador, and then segue to immigration and incarceration in the United States. So it might feel like an overwhelming amount of information across these topics, but they're things that on a daily and weekly basis, I'm working across all of those spaces and trying to find the threads that connect them. So I hope it will feel logical in some way. I'll go ahead and get started while they're figuring out the tech, but Zoom friends, just hold on a little bit because the PowerPoint is coming for you. To situate myself, so I've been doing research on the politics of violence in El Salvador and Mexico for 20 plus years. I was actually at early in my life schooled the Americas protests in 1999, 2000, 2001 when I was in college, and really started to learn about the history of U.S. intervention in Latin America. And I now teach Latin American politics and U.S. Latin American relations at Emerson. I'm just finishing up teaching that this semester, actually. So wonderful, thanks. And if you could just go ahead on to the next slide, even. So I have done a range of different things connected to El Salvador. I've done some freelance journalism there. I did doctoral research there in the early 2000s. And then since 2016, I've been serving as an expert witness in asylum proceedings or in immigration court proceedings more generally for people who face deportation orders from the US government. I've done about 140 cases across both Mexico and El Salvador, so people from those countries who are dealing with deportation orders in US courts. And my expertise there is really focused on a range of vulnerable population markers. So people who have dealt with gender-based violence, people who have dealt with gang violence, indigenous folks, and other categories that the state is particularly unable to protect from harm. In this moment, under the Trump administration, the state of exception in El Salvador, combined with the Trump administration's interest in accelerating the rate of deportation, puts certain vulnerable categories of people at increased risk, because what people would potentially be deported back to in El Salvador is different than it was prior to the state of exception, which I'll talk about in more depth in a few minutes. But all of this, for me, fits into my interest in carcerality, what it means to have to do with imprisonment, and how that overlaps with the ability of state institutions to protect or to passively or actively facilitate harm towards people. So if we could have the next slide, please, Charlie. And actually, just go to the next slide. That's just a list of publications on El Salvador, which if people, maybe we can put those in the chat at the end. Part of my own work in El Salvador has been to do academic publications. And so I wrote a book that came out in English in 2017 called Democratization and Memories of Violence, Ethnic Minority Rights Movements in Mexico, El Salvador, and Turkey. And it took a number of years to get it translated into Spanish. I was finally able to do that and to take the Spanish version of the book back to some of the people that I had interviewed in El Salvador. I had gone back previously but had not had the book ready in Spanish, and in the spirit of trying to make it be accessible and really trying to be community-minded about returning the fruits of research to people who are affected by the issues, it was important to me to get that translated. So I'm with Senora Juliana de Ama de Chile, who is one of the language keepers, one of the indigenous language keepers of the Nahuatl language in the Sonsonate region, and then with an indigenous organizing group based in San Salvador, returning the book back to them. Next slide, please. And that was my most recent trip, which was just in February of 2024, was the last time I had been back. One of the things in that book that I have to own up to is the mistake of considering El Salvador a democratizing country. So I was doing the research for the book in basically from 2008 to 2016, and then it went to press in 2017. And that was really a time in both El Salvador and Turkey where there was a sense that democracy was going to consolidate. There had been changes of power. The FMLN had won the presidency in 2009. That was seen as the symbolic moment in the process of procedural consolidation, where parties are able to negotiate power changes with minimal violence or disruption. And so many scholars of El Salvador were talking about it as a democratizing country. And so I was in that space of feeling really hopeful that things were going to shift. And I stayed hopeful until 2019, 2020, when the Bukele administration came to power. Nayib Bukele was elected president, and began a swift agenda of anti-democratic measures that really consolidated with declaring the state of emergency in the country in March 2022. And I probably don't have time to get into the whole background of that, but many of the steps that the Salvadoran president took to consolidate power fundamentally weakened Salvadoran institutions that protect democracy. And so I have a few examples there. The purging of the Supreme Court, the forced retirement of judges that were investigating cases of state violence from the Civil War through to the present day, and fundamentally reinterpreting the Constitution to allow running for an additional term, which previously El Salvador has always been a one-term presidential system. So these are, as a political scientist, these are indicators to me that the rule of law is not intact and rights are not being protected. Next slide, please. One of the ways that we see the rule of law not being protected is the way that mass arrest, and I'm sorry the font is so small for folks who are here in person with me, there has been suspension of freedoms of expression, and particularly the ability of state officers to arrest and incarcerate anyone only on the suspicion of gang affiliation. So the bar of proving that someone is gang affiliated has become word of mouth. So if a neighbor says to another neighbor whose fence line they don't like, oh, this person is gang affiliated, police can come and arrest that person and detain them on the basis of a random accusation. And there are many, many cases where this has happened. So the breakdown in the democratic guarantee to being innocent but until proved guilty, for example, is really undermining the context of human rights in the country. Since the state of exception began 3.5 years ago, more than, that says 85,000, more than 86,000 people have been detained. Anyone can denounce anyone. And so not only people who may be living in a gang neighborhood or have a family member who's gang affiliated be vulnerable, but also people who have nothing to do with gangs. So regardless of how you feel about gangs, gang affiliation is only one of the reasons that people are being arrested and detained. And the Tutela Legal, which is a human rights organization based in San Salvador, has estimated that about a third of the people who have been detained under the state of exception are likely gang affiliated in some way. Another third may have some tangential relationship to people who may be gang affiliated, and then another third have nothing whatsoever to do with gangs. So we're talking about upwards of 30,000 people detained have no gang affiliation whatsoever, but under the state of exception, gang affiliation is the reason that people are supposedly able to be arbitrarily detained in this way. Well, what happens when someone is detained? One of the changes under the state of exception that the Bukele administration put in place is the complete and total blackout of communication between incarcerated people and their communities on the outside. So in the United States, if someone is incarcerated, there is generally an expectation that, setting aside if someone is removed from general population, but if someone's in general population in prison, they can receive mail, they can receive and make phone calls, and they have the right to family visitation and lawyer visitation. So there's like a basic expectation that people have communication mechanisms with the outside world, even when incarcerated in the US. That was also true in El Salvador prior to the state of exception. So since March 2022, when someone is detained in El Salvador, they no longer have rights or ability to communicate with anyone. No mail, no phone calls, no visits. So people are detained, they're incarcerated, and they're entirely cut off from their families, from their children, from legal support, and from communities. So communities are sending, it's fine to leave it on that one. I'll get to that slide shortly. Family members will send packets with food and hygiene supplies to people and have no ability to confirm if it ever arrives to them. Families will try to send insulin to their diabetic family members who are arrested. No confirmation that it ever arrives, and we know that there's been rampant theft of those packets, for example. So some people may be wondering, well, but isn't this kind of extreme measure necessary to address gang violence in El Salvador? Because we know that El Salvador has had a reputation for being extremely violent, controlled by gangs, with one of the highest homicide rates in the world. So it's a fair question to say, well, is it working? This sounds extreme, but is it working? And it's important to note that though there are a reduced number of gang members on the streets of El Salvador, it has not actually made the country safer for everyone. It has made some experiences more safe for some people. And my argument is that it really depends on someone's identity. So me, as an outsider with a US passport, and a lot of economic privilege going to El Salvador, yeah, my Uber ride might feel safer from the airport to my hotel. My walking down the street to get a pupusa in San Salvador might feel safer for me because I'm having a particular kind of experience in the country. But when I was there in 2023, 2024, doing interviews with people that were in formerly gang-controlled neighborhoods that are now police or military-controlled neighborhoods, I heard a lot of stories, particularly from women, about the way that police and military personnel had essentially stepped into the power vacuum to continue the same patterns of sexual violence, the same patterns of economic exploitation that gangs had previously been perpetrating. So previously, teenage girls were being kidnapped by gangs and sold into sexual slavery. Well, now the police and military are doing that, and sometimes they're doing it while they're in uniform, and sometimes they're doing it after working hours when they're not in uniform. But the same kind of violence is still happening if you're a working class woman or girl in a working class neighborhood that was previously gang controlled. So some people in El Salvador are having increased experiences of safety under the state of exception, and some people are not. And given my focus on the most vulnerable populations in a given society, I'm really interested in the experiences of those who are not. Other people who are specifically vulnerable right now include people with any sort of criminal conviction in El Salvador. So if someone had served time, and I did interviews with formerly incarcerated people when I was there, if someone had served time years ago, served their time, been released from prison, they were now automatically suspected of being potentially gang involved because of that perhaps decade ago criminal record, and therefore neighbors are tipping off police and they're staying sequestered in their houses to avoid rearrest. Similarly for deported people. So folks who are deported from the US are, so in Salvadoran society, there's a general assumption that if you get deported from the US, you've done something wrong. And so there is increased scrutiny and targeting of people under the state of exception as well. Next slide, please. Oops, that's not letting it advance. Thank you, Cassie, for doing some support with Charlie there on the tech. Because I want to segue from, if this will let us get to, because I can't actually remember what my next slide is going to be about. Let's see, there we go. Okay, so one of the ways that I have tried to use my scholarship and my training as a political scientist in doing causal analysis is to apply that in writing country condition reports for people who are dealing with their immigration cases in the US. So it's a way of applying academic analysis to things that impact people's real lives. I have usually been invited by the attorney for the person potentially at risk of deportation. And these days that often means people who are already detained. Prior to 2025, I was mostly supporting people that were not detained, but now there's been a lot of detained cases. And they will invite me to do both a written and then an oral testimony. The Department of Homeland Security attorney will do a cross-examine. The judge may have questions, but I've been in this way trying to increase the awareness for all parties about the reality of the country, which is different in practice than it may look on paper. You know, on paper, there's a law that says rape is a crime. Well, the practice is that it isn't treated as a crime in a lot of cases. So what expert witnesses do is we try to fill in that gap between what's on paper and what's in practice. Next slide, please. And so I've also done global declarations, and these are declarations that are not particular to any one person's case, but they generally describe the country conditions. And so that global declaration is on file at the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies at the University of San Francisco School of Law, and it's been accessed and downloaded thousands of times by attorneys throughout the United States. So because it is very time-consuming for folks like me to provide testimony, sometimes I don't have the time or the attorneys don't have the time, but their case may fit the fact pattern that I can speak to. So there's these global declarations on El Salvador, and I'm working for one on Mexico, that speak to things like the culture of masculinity. So how does machismo or marianismo operate in Salvadoran or Mexican society? What is the state's ability to protect or not protect certain categories of people? How is democratic backsliding happening in practice versus what we might see on paper? Next slide, please. So these global declarations I see as a way to translate academic expertise into something that has a tangible impact. Okay, so El Salvador it's been very much in the news as a deportation destination this year in 2025. Very much in the news was the case of the Venezuelans who were deported and held in the SECOT, the Center for Terrorism Confinement, or the mega prison. I did one of the articles I published earlier this year with my colleague Sarah Bishop, who's a professor of communications at Baruch College, looks specifically at the Bukele messaging around the mega prison and how he is describing that in relation to the state of human security and insecurity in the country. The conditions of Salvadoran prisons had become more notorious. One of the things I like to point out when I do have a platform, so I'll do it here, is that it's important to look at the mega prison and problematize it, but there's a lot of other prisons in El Salvador that are also really problematic. So it's not just that one prison that is a problem, it's the way that prison is operated by the state that is the problem. And so I did a policy brief for the Immigrant Wellbeing Collective earlier this year that makes a number of really specific recommendations as to how the US government should interact with President Bukele and the Salvadoran prison system more broadly. Next slide, please. One of the things that I talk about a lot are risks to people who are deported to El Salvador. When someone, regardless of their identity, arrives in the country, the police and military and judiciary are really not equipped to protect people who may be at risk of increased harm. So if someone had left an abuser in El Salvador years ago and they're being returned, the state is not there with a restraining order that they're capable of enforcing to keep that person safe. And so again, on paper, there might be the possibility of getting that restraining order, but in practice, the ability for that restraining order to actually prevent harm coming to someone is not borne out. So there's really high levels of impunity combined with low state capacity and very low political will to actually change these practices. And this means that people are unlikely to be, certain categories of people are unlikely to be protected from harm by the state. I'm gonna skip ahead. Maybe in the Q&A we can talk about, well, what would it mean for someone who is not Salvadoran to be sent to El Salvador, or what does it mean for someone from El Salvador to be sent to Mexico or Honduras, because there's more and more third country deportations happening under this administration. But you're probably familiar with many of the immigration policies that this administration is trying to move ahead with. The removal of deferred action for childhood arrivals, for example, the removal of temporary protected status, the enforcement of ICE all over the place, including in places that previously were considered to be off limits, like schools and courts. We hear more and more stories of people being arrested at immigration check-in meetings, for example, the mandatory check-in meetings. And we now know that the Supreme Court has agreed to hear the case of the challenge to birthright citizenship, which is something that I would just flag as an important case to follow. Next slide, please. So I want to make a segue here to the other work that I do on carcerality. So that's what I do abroad and with a domestic connection. But here in the US, I founded, and I'm the director of this organization called the Emerson Prison Initiative. We'll go to the next slide, please. Which brings a pathway to a college education for folks who are incarcerated in Massachusetts State Prison. And Emerson Prison Initiative students who pass our very rigorous and highly selective admissions process become admitted students of Emerson College, and they are working towards bachelor's degrees in media, literature, and culture with a minor in economics. We officially launched as a credit-bearing and matriculated program in 2017, so we've been going for 8 years now. We've had almost 20 graduates, and we're working with 38 undergraduates across 2 different cohorts inside. We admitted our 4th cohort this past fall, so they're first-year students, and we've got our 3rd cohort of students are halfway through their junior year of college. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about how EPI operates in the US. And globally, we know that societies want prisons in general. So there's a lot of tension around what do we do with people that have caused harm, and this fear of the other. I edited a book that I'll plug at the end, but if we look comparatively at incarceration across the globe, this fear of the other really drives incarceration in a lot of different countries. Next slide. And so it's in the US, we have a quarter of the entire incarcerated population in the world incarcerated here, even though the US only has 5% of the world's total population. Next slide. I'm going to go fairly quickly through these because I hope I'm not running on too long, but I'll probably have another 10 minutes. Okay. But in addition to the US, here are other top incarcerators around the world. So we have Brazil, China, India, Russia, and El Salvador has actually now surpassed the United States, not in terms of numbers of people incarcerated, but in terms of percentage of the population that is incarcerated. So since the state of exception in El Salvador, now almost 2% of the entire Salvadoran population is incarcerated, which even edges out the United States. Next slide. But what are prisons doing? What is it that they are doing? And prisons do not always serve they serve a function of punishment, yes, but that's not the only thing that they're doing. They also serve as a way to deliver public policy responses that have not played out elsewhere, or that have played out elsewhere, but that are playing out for really specific populations in these ways. So racial resentment, poverty, mental health crises, addiction, these things become managed as social policies through carcerality rather than addressing them as public health issues, for example. Next slide. One of the things that I try to mention whenever I have the opportunity to speak is that public safety can be re-envisioned. We actually can have a different way to try to make our communities safe. So I advocate for things like violence prevention, for investment in communities. One of the root causes of harm that I try to identify is unequal access to insufficient resources is often a reason that people commit an act of robbery, for example. Unequal access to insufficient resources feeds into these cycles of harm, and community investment is a direct way to counter that. Diversion programs for adolescents, mental health services, and then humane circumstances of incarceration is a longer conversation. There's a lot of, I think, important tension between reform, what's considered to be reform and abolitionism, which I won't have time to get into, but we'll go to the next slide. But I do think it's important to say that it's possible to have public safety, but prison is one way of answering that at a superficial level, and I don't think actually addresses the root issues. These are just some photos from our recent, or I guess these were from our 2022 graduation, and then we just had a commencement this past June, graduating an additional 7 folks with their bachelor's degrees. Go to the next slide, please. For folks who aren't convinced, and that may not be this audience, but I do include this for when people need convincing as to why it's worth the effort and the cost to run a college and prison program. It is expensive to incarcerate people, and in the state of Massachusetts, the average is about $130,000 per person per year to incarcerate. And we know that for especially our aging population that is needing increased medical care, and also for women who are incarcerated in Massachusetts, it can get upwards to $250,000 per person per year, which is actually more expensive than even a school like Emerson, which is on the high end of expensive elite institutions. So education is cheaper, and it has really clear, proven results. People that earn their bachelor's degree while incarcerated mostly don't go back to prison. The nationwide average is about 50% of people who cycle back in to prison within 3 years. If you have a bachelor's degree, it's between 1% and 5%, and that 5% has been technical violations of parole, not new crimes. So education fiscally, if I was to stand in front of the legislature and say, why should why should this be a bipartisan issue? It's fiscally responsible. It's investing in people in a way that gives them the opportunity to become taxpayers rather than a tax burden. And some people don't like that argument, but I think it's important to say it because there's a wide range of people that can support people getting an education while incarcerated. Next slide, please. Okay, I sort of just said this. So college and prison both reduces recidivism, which is that return to prison, and also it's transformational. One of the things that we hear from our students and our alumni over and over is being in college is a chance to feel a sense of pride in themselves when a lot of folks feel a sense of shame. They feel like they've let themselves down or their families down through whatever brought them to prison. And people will, when people are applying to the program, and we say, well, why do you want to be in the Emerson Prison Initiative? And they'll say, well, I want to make my son or daughter proud. I want to make my mom proud of me. I want to do something so that I can believe in myself again. And that aspect of personal transformation is really important. It's what I think the best kind of liberal arts education can give to anyone, but for people that are in difficult circumstances and have feel like they have stepped off the path that they wanted for themselves or that their families wanted for them, it really does have that kind of impact. Next slide, please. Didn't realize I have quite so many slides, so sorry for all of this. Oh, and it looks like my graphic didn't appear there, so I'll say I edited this book called Education Behind the Wall, and actually I brought a copy to leave here at the community church, so I can add, if you have a little resource corner, it can add this one to you. But if anyone, either in person or online, is interested in learning more, that book has become a really useful resource for not only for college students, but for community members that care about this issue, also for people teaching in the program, for teaching assistants, and I will say for partakers, mentors as well. And I'll give a shout out to my colleague Cassie, who's here from the Partakers organization, because being in college is a challenging thing if you have never done it before. And so the Emerson Prison Initiative partners with Partakers, which provides socio-emotional mentoring, matches people with groups of mentors who come in visiting hours to get to support people, not necessarily academically, but more holistically as they are navigating this new step in their lives and trying to make meaning out of it. And so the previous book that was listed, and then this second book, Unlocking Learning, which I co-edited with my colleague Justin McDevitt, and this one looks at carcerality in comparative perspective with case studies from 12 different countries, is looking at how education, along with more restorative practices, less punitive, less punishing, but more restoration, can really increase positive outcomes for individuals, for families, for communities, and for society more broadly. Next slide, I think it should be almost done. Maybe it's my last slide, almost. Okay, so what can we learn from comparative studies? I was trained as a comparative political scientist, and maybe you've picked that up since I've been talking about Mexico and El Salvador and immigration and Emerson Prison Initiative. I think it's really useful to look comparatively at different kinds of systems to understand what is the same and what is different. What is the same about President Bukele's state of exception in El Salvador and the kinds of authoritarian practices that we're seeing with U.S. authoritarianism in this particular moment? In what ways are freedoms being restricted in both places? In what ways are they being protected? Which people feel safe enough to speak up and advocate for which kinds of issues in different spaces? We can navigate our political realities a little better, I think, when we understand what is unique and what is not unique about our given experience. Comparative carceral studies show us how societies address things like harm, safety, retribution, and sometimes restoration. And social and political values are really encoded in carcerality, in the process of imprisonment. What does a society value? Why does prison in Norway look so different than prison in the US? Well, what is valued in Norwegian society that explains that difference with US carcerality? So I look to these indicators in both El Salvador and the US to see how retribution and punishment is really valued over safety and restoration. And I invite all of us to think about how we can contribute to that those restorative processes, the processes that really do contribute to safety, things that include, here in the Massachusetts context, access to an education while incarcerated, access to mentorship, and to socio-emotional support for folks. And there are many college and prison programs throughout the US, so if there are folks listening from other states figuring out what program is going on near you that might be that you might be able to connect with is one plug that I'll make. Next slide, and maybe it's my last one. Should be close to it. Yes, okay, there's my thank you slide. So the Emerson Prison Initiative website is there, my email is there. I really appreciate you listening. I don't know if we have any time for questions, but I'm...
After Colleen's last song.
Perfect, okay, well, thank you so much.
Can we say a mantra 3 or 4 times over? Prisons should be colleges. Prisons should be colleges. Prisons should be colleges. Prisons should be colleges. And then we can all say, duh. Colleen, how about one last piece of beauty from you?
All right. Wow, that was an amazing talk, Mneesha. so much great information. And so thank you so much. I guess I'll do this song. It's called Your Place of Freedom. And you can sing along a little bit. It just says, the chorus is, you're a child of the universe, another being on the earth. No rule, no law, no ignorance can deny your place of freedom. You're a child of the universe, another being on the earth. No rule, no law, no ignorance can deny your place of freedom. I've got your back, I will harbor you. We are family, no border, no bloodline. I'll harbor you like a port holds a ship of plenty. Will they starve our creativity with hate, with weapons and money, with every ounce of arrogance they try to deny our place of freedom? But don't they know the wrongs done to the earth? Can't we fathom the genocide and nuclear threat? We mourn and we remember and we forgive, yeah, but we never forget. This is my prayer to the highest son and daughter and daughter. You're a child of the universe, another being on the earth, and no rule, no law, no ignorance can deny. You're a child of the universe, another being on the earth, and no rule, no law, no ignorance can deny your place of freedom. Oh, your place of freedom, yeah, your place of freedom, your place of freedom. Thank you.
Oh, Colleen, thanks so much. What a beautiful way to finish this out.
You have a beautiful community there, so.
When can we have you here live? Maybe sometime soon, I hope.
I would love that.
Let's try and make that happen sometime, okay?
All right, definitely.
Yeah. I want to do another shout out to Cassie Huck, who is here from the organization Partakers, and has a table with some literature and is looking for volunteers, and it's about giving support to the education program that we heard about from Mneesha. Cassie, would you like to say a few words, or something like that? Yeah.
Hey, thank you for introducing me. I'll just take 1 minute of your time. I've heard Mneesha speak a few times now, and every time she fires me up and makes me want to do something. And I'm not a professor. I have a bachelor's degree in art. So I'm wondering, I care about the incarcerated population. I care about our incarcerated neighbors, and they've been hidden from me just because of where I live and a whole history of redlining and all kinds of things. But so because I want to do something, and a lot of us want to do something, and we maybe don't have the means to be a professor and teach college and prison, we organize mentor teams from the community, teams of about 4 people to 1 student at EPI. And we just walk with them throughout their college journey and provide that continual support for them while they're incarcerated or until they're released. So that means the commitment is about 4 years, but we only go in once a month. And in terms of, you know, my daily schedule, that's a pretty light lift, and it makes a huge impact for the student in keeping them encouraged and keeping them focused, and knowing that they have people in the community outside in their corner cheering for them makes a huge difference. So if anyone is interested in talking more about the Partakers Mentoring Program, people here can talk to me. I have that table in the back. And then people online are welcome to attend an info session that I give monthly. You can go to www.partakers.org and you can find the info session there. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Cassie. And thanks for lifting us out of dinosaur tech stupidity and helping us get that PowerPoint. And no insult to our Zoomster, Charlie Welch. Thank you, Charlie, for being here and for helping us so many times over the years. We do have time for a Q&A. What I'm going to say is that I have to, around 12:40, no, let's say 12:30, call a lift and get to the airport laden with 3 big suitcases. And I can't help but tell you what the suitcases have. They have thrift store blank shirts that I take to Hilda Caballero, and she and her 3 daughters do a beautiful embroidery, which I bring and keep the best ones for myself and market a few that are available in our Christmas holiday Zoom Hanukkah bazaar here. We actually do a Zoom bazaar where by appointment you can zoom in and I'll give you a guided tour of all the crafts that are on the table that come from a village called Teocinte, made out of handmade backstrap woven cloth from Guatemala, from Solola, Guatemala, Maya Weavers Cooperative. So we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A, and I might ask either Charlie or John, Reverend John Gibbons, our affiliate minister at Community Church, to sort of guide the Q&A as I kind of slip my way out of here to the airport to fly to San Romero de las Americas International Airport. That's not really what it's called, but he is a saint of the Catholic Church now. I also need to mention that there is a basket in the back with some dollars in it that you can add to. There's also a way you can do the same online through a credit card or a PayPal option. communitychurchofboston.org. So let's bring up Mneesha and open the floor to any questions that we have.
Thank you so much, Dean, and good luck getting to the airport on time, and happy travels to
Thank you.
El Salvador when
Thank
you go.
you.
So, yeah, that's which should I use
Either
this one?
one.
Okay. Do you need people asking questions to be mic'd so that folks on Zoom
Yes,
can
yes.
hear? So maybe
That's
this should
right.
be for
That's
them,
right.
and then I will speak into this one. So that way we keep it communicative. And I don't know if you have the practice of folks being able to unmute if they want to ask a question on
Yes,
Zoom.
yes. They raise their hand and they unmute, and you can hear them online, and you can hear through physically here. Do you know from your research if there's any way to get out of SECOT?
I do know that there have been some high-profile reveals that for about $1,200, gang leaders have actually been able to buy weekend passes to leave the prison and come back to the community. So yes, for the right amount of money, it is not an entirely secure facility, but they're not escaping. They're being escorted out after the cash has been handed over by prison staff. So it is secure from escapes, but people are, there have been questions like, well, if somebody's abuser is in prison, doesn't that mean they are not able to keep abusing someone on the street? And the answer is, well, if they can buy their way out on a weekend pass, they can do it directly. If they have a lesser amount of money, they can bribe for access to telephone and be able to still be issuing commands to people who are not yet incarcerated.
John.
Thank you so much, Mneesha. You covered a lot of ground and did so just remarkably well. And my question is another one that covers a lot of ground, but you made a brief passing reference to, I'm not exactly sure how you phrased it, but the creative tension between abolitionism and I'm not sure you would call it reformism, but something other than abolitionism. Would you point me in a direction as to how to inform myself more about what may be creative in that tension?
Yeah, so this semester and last semester I have taught a class on our Boston campus for Boston-based students interested in the Emerson Prison Initiative's work. And so one of the books we used is published by, I think it's by AK Press, and it's called A Visual Primer on the History of Mass Incarceration. I'm forgetting the first title, but in that book there's a couple of pages that lay out the reformism versus abolitionism tension, and I had some really productive conversations with students because I love everything else about the book. I think it's a masterful book that people should purchase and read. But I don't think they're totally fair in the oversimplified ways that reformism and abolitionism are presented there, because there's a middle ground that places like the Emerson Prison Initiative sit. So reformism is the basic idea that let's make prisons more humane. Let's keep having prisons and keep looking to prisons as the answer for social problems, but let's make them prettier, let's have them be more comfortable. And then abolitionism on the other side of the spectrum is prisons shouldn't exist. Well, I think there's actually a lot more gray area there, and movements like the higher education and prison movement has not really developed a solid language for talking about where we fit. We're not there to make prisons look more humane. You know, our students deal with terrible conditions, and what it means to be a student in places that are highly restrictive, where their rights are sometimes violated quite frequently, is not the reason that I miss dinner with my kids on a regular basis to go do work for EPI. Like I think that I'm doing something more than putting lipstick on the pig, so to speak. At the same time, there are incarcerated people now in Massachusetts, throughout the United States, throughout the world, and I don't have the patience to wait until the entire system is imploded to be able to do something new to serve people who are in that space right now. So I think many of us in the higher ed and prison community do come to this work with a spirit of abolitionism, of really feeling like the way that we're addressing the public safety issue in the United States is not functional. It's not actually making us safer. But the answer for how we get there has a lot of variation. And so with my students just this last week, I was talking about, well, is it incremental abolitionism? Is that what we're doing? Where like we have this vision that public safety should be handled in a very different way, but we're gonna incrementally work for it because we see the liberation of each of our students as contributing to the liberation of their communities, of these larger communities, of changing how their communities can be safe. So I'm sitting with that concept. Just this week, with my EPI staff, we're planning to print out the critical resistance posters that talk about abolitionism versus reformism. So I think, and that's a resource that's available online. There's a lot of text, but it's like a choose your own adventure. Is it abolitionism if it goes down these decision trees? So that's another resource. And I think that the visual primer on mass incarceration is a useful starting point, and all of the other graphics and images in that book are just incredible teaching tools. But I think there's a middle way that has not been really represented in the discourse, where I think a lot of these educational interventions sit.
Who wrote that book?
I can't remember their names, or I would have said it. So yeah, if someone has their phone, maybe Cassie's going for her phone and can Google it and let us know. It's two authors. Yeah, it's two authors. So I could look it up after I'm.
Is it Kilgore?
Yes, is as one.
And he had a woman do the
Thank you. That is the book. So I highly recommend that one. It's been useful. I've taught out of it 2 semesters in a row.
Kilgore
Yeah, thank you.
spoke here just a few months ago.
Amazing. Okay, well that's so cool. Yes. Oh, maybe can we bring the mic up to this?
I actually have a
you
question.
have a question. Okay, you first,
Okay.
and then you can bring the mic
I
up.
was wondering, is there any place in the world you can point to that has a good policy for avoiding incarceration? And
That's a great question. So I referenced the Norway chapter of the book before, and here's what I'll say. Norway gets both lifted up as the idyllic model because it's their incarceration rate is extremely low. So there's a lot of other things that happen to divert people out of the system before they end up in prison. And once they end up in prison, they are living in things that look like studio apartments, and they're wearing their own clothes, and they are having much shorter sentences. The United States has extremely long sentences, and I will say Massachusetts is also part of that, having very lot of life sentences and longer sentences, and really having now quite a geriatric population that is incarcerated, which brings up questions about who is posing a risk and what does public safety mean. So I think that the Norwegian model is an interesting model to look at. Other people will push back and say, yeah, but it's still prison, and that's true. And I do think that societally we have to grapple with at what point has someone breached both the laws and the social acceptability of society to need to be removed from it. Like, right now it's like enormous. There's lots of people that US society has said should be removed. Well, do we winnow that down to be the smallest number of people so that the prison is addressing public safety only for a minute number of people that truly are not able to be in society? Some abolitionists would say that's still not sufficient. There should be no prison at all. So I think everyone for themselves has to figure out where they sit. I will say in the United States, last year I had the honor of hosting the commissioner for the state of Maine Department of Correction and screened with the filmmaker the film about the Maine state prison system, which is doing some remarkably innovative things that I think other states could learn from. And I also had the privilege of reviewing his memoir, which is coming out in a couple of months, about his life. And he is bringing beekeeping and organic gardening and yoga and a lot of things that people might say, well, you're just making the prison more humane, but it's actually qualitatively changing people's experience of being inside, and it's changing their outcomes when they leave. Because if they are actually getting the kind of therapeutic and nurturing environment that they need to heal some of the trauma that is maybe fueling cycles of violence, and then they go out and they've also had job training that allows them to be employed, that does change their outcomes. So it's not only Norway or Austria. I think even within the United States, I look to that state system as a place that is doing things differently that I would love for Massachusetts to learn from, and that other states throughout the country could learn from as well. But there isn't one perfect model. There's just models that are doing it better.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you do on behalf of incarcerated people. My concerns with incarceration go back a long time because I lived in the South for 10 years, and I was exposed to a lot of people who were incarcerated in the conditions in prisons down in South. My question is, collaborating with groups like the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama, Brian Stevenson's group, and all the work that they're doing, and also the group that is in Florida, the Human Rights Defense Center, which publishes prison legal news and criminal legal news. I subscribe to those publications as a way of supporting inmates, people incarcerated, to get information because of the large, tremendous amount of human rights abuses that go on every day in America's prisons. Do you do any collaboration work with the Human Rights Defense Center or the Equal Justice Initiative in line with your education thing with Emerson? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and thanks for your support of those organizations. We have a wide range of both direct partners and then like a looser affiliation of community organizations that we see ourselves as being in line with. So Brian Stevenson's work, the Equal Justice Initiative, we are huge fans of that work. I've reached out before. I actually asked him to blurb my book, and he was too busy to be able to do that, but I'm a huge fan of his. So we, for example, we've had more looser affiliations with organizations like the Marshall Project, which brings writing into prisons and also brings writing of incarcerated folks to the outside. There's a publication called College Inside, which really focuses on the experience of incarcerated college students, and we've been able to publications inside before